You are listening to That Hoarder Overcome Compulsive Hoarding. I don't talk in real life about having hoarding disorder, so I talk about it on this podcast instead. And because I'm anonymous, I can talk really, really honestly. Subscribe to the podcast and find my social media links, episode transcripts, and every link that I mention at overcomecompulsivehoarding.co.uk. Finally, I am not a doctor. I'm just a hoarder doing her best. So do seek professional support if and when you need it. Hey, how are you?
Let's start with some housekeeping.
A little bit of housekeeping before we go into the interview with Jan Eppingstall. So, first of all, in episode 146, I reviewed a film called Where Dragons Live. And in episode 172, I interviewed a woman from that film about clearing out her parents' house after they died. And a number of you were really moved by that interview and have asked about how to see the film. And there is news on that front. If you are in the UK, it is in some cinemas at the moment, and it is also available now to watch online. So I will include a link in the show notes for everything you need to know about how to watch Where Dragons Live. Second piece of housekeeping, the next De-Hoarding Accountability Zoom session is on Friday the 23rd of May, and the one after that is on Sunday the 1st of June. It would be brilliant to see you there. We have a really good chat. We get a bit of stuff done. We bond over the weirdness of having hoarding disorder, and we hopefully make a bit of progress on our homes. Find out how to come along and get your ticket at overcomecompulsivehoarding.co.uk/ticket. And finally, if you are on Instagram and you are not already following the podcast there, please do so. Come and say hi. I think it's a fun place. I am at That Hoarder Podcast, and it would be lovely to see you there. Okay, with no further ado, here I am chatting with Dr Jan Eppingstall about engaging with our stuff. It's a really interesting listen and has a few moments where my mind explodes a little bit with revelations that Jan says. Okay, enjoy. So I am here with Dr Jan Eppingstall. Jan is a counsellor based in Melbourne, Australia. She has a PhD in hoarding. Jan, how are you?
Grand, my dear, grand.
Marvellous.
I am very well.
Do you need a permission slip?
Jan and I have an occasional segment called Permission Slip, where one or the other of us brings an item that we're for some reason having trouble making a decision on and ask whether we can have permission to get rid of it. So Jan, I need to ask you for a permission slip today.
I'm so excited to hear more.
So the context is I have taken antidepressants for a long time, and it means I have a chronically dry mouth. So I get prescribed artificial saliva, which is horrible. And more often, I just pop mints into my mouth constantly to just keep some saliva going. And my current mint of choice is a brand called Smint. And they come, you're going to know instantly, they come in cute little tins.
Oh, yeah.
And when I first kind of started switching to Smints, I thought, this won't be a danger zone. I won't feel any need to keep a load of little cute little tins on the off chance that I will suddenly need a cute little tin. However, the reality of the situation is that I'm finding myself going, maybe I need to keep the cute little tins, because when I find a need for them, they will be perfect.
You heard yourself, didn't you?
I completely heard myself.
You heard yourself say, when I find a use for them, they will be perfect.
I have zero concept of when they might be useful. I can't think of a single time. It's a kind of matchbox-sized tin.
The good thing is that it's probably aluminium, excellent for recycling. You know that when you put it in the recycling bin, that it will be recycled. So that's a start. I'm of the opinion that there's no problem in keeping a couple, even 3. And then making sure that that's all you keep. And then if you do find an amazing use for them, you will have a couple and you can try it out, but you won't have 30. Just yeah.
That's not about,
yeah. The other thing is they're not see-through. So,
yes.
If you can't, like, what you put in there needs to be things that, you don't need to see in order to know what's in there. So then there's a labeling involved, and then, I always think about the process of what I'm going to have to do in order to utilize it.
Yes.
And if there's extra steps, it's like, chances of me actually not using that and just finding something else or going and buying something.
It's true.
Which I don't like to do.
Yeah, it's true, because I'm all about I'm quite intentional these days about trying to minimize the number of steps something involves, especially if it's something I don't relish doing.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, you're right. There would be extra steps. And yeah, I think keeping 2 for some emergency matchbox-sized tin need, but then stopping after that. That feels doable.
Yeah, because I kept, for the younger listeners, I kept the film canisters for a long time because they were the perfect size to put bobby pins in and, that sort of stuff in my handbag. Now, have I ever used a bobby pin that I have put in a black canister in my handbag? No, I will admit I have never used it. Never. But I had them just in case. Yeah. And so now I think I may have one left. And I think that's got, I don't know, some bit of hardware in there and I've had to put a sticker on it. But of course I can't see what's in there. So it really does need that step of the sticker, and then I probably have to write it in my bullet journal as to where I put those extra nuts and bolts.
I had a success yesterday when I needed a sewing kit, which is the kind of thing I need twice a year. And I thought, if I was sensible, I will have put it there. And I had. It was where sensible past me put it.
Like some sort of an angel moment.
Yeah.
That rarely happens to me. No. Very rarely.
I know. I was so like, I needed it. I didn't want it. I just needed to repair something quickly. It wasn't a big job, but I put it off mostly because I was like, I won't be able to find it. But my first thought was, I wonder, because it's specifically just one of those little like repair kits, just with the basics.
Yeah.
And I thought, I wonder if I will have thought, given that it's for fixing things, I should put it with my tools. And I looked with my tools and there it was.
See, sometimes that's where I overthink.
Yeah.
I overthink the perfect spot to put it rather than just going with my gut and just doing the first thing I think.
Yeah.
And that's when I get myself tied up because I've been too clever. That was too clever of me to put it there.
Yeah.
But then when I do find it, I do get a little bit of a buzz. Or when I tell someone where something is and they can find it. Oh, my God. That is like just
winning at life.
Heaven when that happens. That's winning. That is winning at life. That is winning at life.
So, Jan, do I have permission to get rid of smint tins?
Yes. Yes.
Thank you very much. I needed that.
I'm all for it.
So today we are talking about engaging with our stuff. Jan has talked previously about how often people who hoard keep lots of stuff but don't ever engage with it. And it wasn't until you said that I realised that was often the case for me. So can we start with you explaining what that means? What does engaging with our possessions mean?
Okay, so that's really seeing, touching, maybe smelling, I don't know. But actually physically being in the present moment with an object or a number of objects. They're often just kind of there, but they're not being acknowledged, and certainly not in a person's awareness. It's kind of like, it's almost like a blurred background, on Zoom where you can't really see it. And I think engaging is really touching, looking at, displaying,
using, revolutionary, but
revolutionary using, exactly. Crazy. My God, using something, which look, that is a core hook for people, because if I use it, then it will be gone.
It is.
So it's complex. Yeah.
So what have you noticed in your work with clients about how people who hoard engage with or don't engage with our stuff?
What I notice very often is that clients feel a sense of safety being amongst their possession without actually interacting at all with the stuff, because often only, they might only use just, a small number of possessions, and then the rest of the stuff is kind of just in case, or I'll deal with that at some stage. And there's very little that's actually being utilised or celebrated. So it's almost like the possessions are kind of a backdrop, like I said before, almost like a blurred screen, perhaps even almost like a residue or like a layer of dust, and the top layer of stuff gets used in a utilitarian way, but nothing is kind of displayed or styled or to show off its its uniqueness or its beauty. And it's not handled and it's not enjoyed. So objects, that may hold historical or personal relevance are kind of not cherished and maintained. And that's the thing that hurts my heart the most, because I know that the intention was there to save something.
We kept it because it might be useful, or because
it was precious, or because it meant something, or because someone gave it to us. But then, the sands of time really do, things deteriorate. And that's one of the hardest concepts to get across, I guess, because of that anxiety about making sure that you've got the right thing at the right time, even though you won't be able to get access to it because of the volume. But it's the sense of safety around that.
And this is one of those questions that I wrote, and now I'm about to read it out loud. It's kind of giant. Good luck. What does this tell us about the meaning of our possessions and our relationship to them?
Well, yes. Okay, how many hours have you got? A few things do come to mind, though, a few core things. One is that the emotional connection might, and this kind of was a little bit of an epiphany, not that I don't already know this, but when I kind of wrote this, I thought, so the emotional connection might be to that potential rather than the objects themselves. So they represent possibility, opportunity, rather than, objects for use, which I already know. Another is that when we don't touch the items, we don't need to make decisions about them. So, that means we won't be potentially triggered or activated by coming in contact with memories if we just avoid them and don't interact with them. And to be honest, the sheer volume of possessions mean that we're unlikely to be able to actually engage with much of our stuff. So I think the most important takeaway is that hoarding might be primarily about the psychological comfort a person derives from possessing objects, not the objects themselves. Perhaps that's secondary. Perhaps the objects just that actually don't matter, but it's the having, not the object, which is just, it blows my mind.
Yeah. It makes me think of I'm trying to think of an example and I'm struggling, but when you relax because you know something's there, and I think this is quite a human thing. Your favourite doctor has been off sick for 6 months and she's back back at work. And you don't need her, you don't need a call with her, but you just relax knowing, oh, thank goodness she's back on the team, right?
Exactly. A security blanket almost, yeah.
Yeah, and that's quite a human thing. Or you order food and you're starving and you relax because you know it's coming even though it's not here yet. But yeah, from what you're saying and from the feelings it's given me.
It kind of gave me those feelings too, because I went,
I'm feeling like you're onto something. Like there is a kind of, oh, it's there, I can relax a bit, whether I need it or not. Yeah.
even though I don't need it, but also even though if I'm realistic about it, I probably couldn't get access to it easily. I just know it's there somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah. And why do you think we tend to not engage with our stuff? Is there like active resistance, or do we just forget, or is it just overwhelmed that there's a lot of it?
I do think there's some elements of all of those things, but I do think it does come back to that concept of possessing is kind of the job done. Once you have it, then it's just an insurance policy against being without. So over a period of time, it becomes overwhelmed because it's just turned into, it's not individual items then, it's kind of it's an entity somewhat. And so that means that I think it kind of just fades into the background and it becomes the norm and we habituate to it. And we just keep using the things that are kind of on the top or the things that we used yesterday, or what we never dig deeper because we're so overwhelmed just surviving, getting from day to day and getting out the door to go to work or getting the kids off to school or whatever it is, that we just never really have the opportunity to stop and kind of go, okay. And we don't want to be honest. We're just resistant to digging in and getting in touch with maybe some of the guilt about having so many pencils or having so many can openers because you had to buy one every time you bought a can of dog food or whatever it might be. Like all of that sort of stuff is just something that we want to literally shove under the carpet. So I think that's why we don't really want to engage with it. We're scared.
Yes, I think as you're talking, I'm thinking about even a year ago, if I'd needed to sew something up, there would have been a defeatism in there's no point even trying to find the sewing kit, and you can buy a sewing kit for £1. And so either I can go to Tesco and pick up a basic sewing kit for £1, which will do the job, or I can force myself to look for something that will cause frustration because I won't be able to find it. So there's no point even looking.
Exactly. So that is how we get into the place we're in.
Completely.
I've just got to solve this problem right here and now because it's an emergency. And we just jump from emergency to emergency to emergency.
Yeah, and one little sewing kit won't shift the needle. It won't make any difference if I've got 2 or 5. Like they're that big. It's fine.
Exactly, it's fine.
And similarly, it's £1, it's fine, but pounds add up. Yeah, so it feels like a kind of defeatism and also like a pointlessness. There is no chance I'll be able to find the thing, so I won't even look because it's really miserable to try and find a thing and not be able to.
Yep. Especially when, you're rushing and you've got a deadline or you need to do something and that just feels like you're incompetent. It's a sense of feeling incompetent. Like I really feel like I haven't got my my shit together. I can't get out of the house. So the best way to deal with it is to kind of adapt and go around it. And those ways that we make do, which is great if we're making do with what we've bought. But what we have to do in this case is make do by going out, and picking up a sewing kit. So it's like, it's the opposite of what we really deeply value, which is making the most of what we have.
Yeah. If you want to get even more from me, I have a weekly newsletter that goes out to email subscribers. As a bonus, when you sign up, you get a printable version of a series of questions to help you make decisions when you're dehoarding. Sign up for all of that for free at overcomecompulsivehoarding.co.uk/newsletter. And so let's look at the benefits of engaging with our possessions. In my experience, it's something I can kind of dread, but I'm always pleasantly surprised when I do engage with my stuff. There's a lot of, oh, I've got these things that will actually be useful. Or so often it's like, I was looking for exactly something like this. I don't know how that happened. And also, another massive benefit in my experience is that it just makes me a lot more aware of what I have and roughly where it is.
Exactly. I mean, of course, when we actually take a look at what we have, we often discover those long lost purchases, the new in the packet stuff that we need right now.
Yeah.
And you would have thought at the time when you bought it, this is perfect for blah, blah, blah. So no wonder you find it perfect for whatever it is you need, because you bought it, but you've no memory of buying it. So it's almost like an epiphany. It's this thing there that it's perfect and it's in a colour I like. Wow. I was like, yes, because you bought it.
Who'd have thought?
Who'd have thought? It is a definite benefit. But what I find, super interesting when we kind of look at consumerism and ownership in other cultures, it kind of shines a light on the way we in Western cultures don't tend to interact with our stuff, and what other cultures do in order to kind of connect with material possessions. And we might talk a little bit about some of those concepts later to highlight kind of the contrast. But if we look at the research, there's definitely neurological and psychological benefits to physically touching our objects. That tactile, exploration actually engages brain regions associated with memory, emotional processing, and it can bring a sense of clarity, as to the significance of an item, and the story that it holds is more than vision alone. I mean, personally, I'm a mad toucher. I know that sounds terrible.
We've all got our vices, Jan.
I know, we all have our foibles. But I go shopping and I need to touch and feel everything. It doesn't matter what it is. Like in the supermarket, I want to pick it up and look at it, My husband gets so cross. But I need to feel and experience the things I buy, not just look. So that can help me with my decision-making process as I touch it and practice with it if it's something that's a practical, utilitarian kind of object. But just looking is not enough for me. I need the whole. And in the home, once it's there, actually engaging can clarify how significant or useful the object is, particularly if you pick it up and you go, oh, it's either broken or it doesn't even fit my hand, or I can't wear it because of...
As people know, I've been going through a whole clothing thing. I've been getting rid of a lot of clothes, and a lot I had put aside over the years on the basis that I didn't know if they fitted, or I didn't know if they... And it didn't occur to me for the longest time to just try it on. And it's not just a fit thing, but is this T-shirt a bit too short, or do I feel comfortable in this fabric or whatever?
Exactly.
It's only in the last year that I'll go, I don't know if this fits, I'll try it on. So rather than just put it in a pile of, I'm not sure if this fits, so I don't know what to do with it.
Exactly. I mean, the whole trying it on thing, revolutionary. But, particularly, a lot of us buy a lot of stuff online, let's face it, a lot of stuff. And we may not, particularly if we get a bit sort of caught up in an in an acquisition kind of frenzy. Maybe there's a sale on at a favourite brand store, and we buy dozens of things that, for $10 or whatever it is. But, that frenzy of going, oh, my God, they're all $10. I'm just going to buy all of the ones in my size, but then they arrive and
the fabric's not right, or the fit isn't really,
or they're just, they just don't look good on me when I actually when I bring out, like I buy a pair of black pants and then I try it on with a whole lot of tops that I've got, and I go, oh, you know what? They're not what I really wanted. I wanted them, higher waisted or, more cropped and often we just buy and then set that aside. And by the time we get around to it, we can't return it. We can't afford to go out and get a tailor to fix it because they were $10 pants. Yeah. Intentional purchases are kind of really important. And touching and feeling, going to the stores. Yes, there are elements of it that are there to tempt us. The smell of the store, the music.
Just the way it's laid out, yeah.
Oh, exactly. Everything's so shiny and beautiful and just inviting. And I notice a lot of the music is my era now. I don't know if they're just trying to really target those middle-aged women, but seriously, the amount of Wham and...
bit of Pet Shop Boys and the shop.
Bit of Pet Shop Boys, bit of Concert Club, those are the things that trap you, But if you actually stop and kind of try and block that out and just go, is this really the right object? I'm going to go and try it on. I can tell within like seconds. I don't have to do that walk out and faff around.
Yeah.
I know immediately yes or immediately no.
Yes, because I'm a person who's a lot more about how clothes feel than how they look. Like, obviously, I like them to look nice, but it's more important to me that they feel right.
Yeah. And if you know what the fabric is and how you're going to wash it and all that stuff, all those things that kind of don't happen unless you touch, feel, and interact. But environmental psychologists have also found that physically reorganizing your space can actually reduce the cognitive load, which makes sense. It gives you mental clarity because there's less things that are pinging in your environment. And it's what I notice myself. I mean, even if someone were to come into my office and they probably think, oh, it's not that cluttered or disorganized, it just helps me to bring my mind into the present moment. When I dust all the surfaces and I check out my little special objects and all that sort of stuff, it kind of allows me to see if anything needs any repairs or maintenance or if there's anything
or if
broken.
You're running out of Post-it notes or whatever. Yeah.
Exactly. Whatever. I go, oh, I need to just refill that pen. Haven't got any. Put that on the list. But the other thing I love to do is interact with clothes and all of my objects. I like to kind of touch and assess. So I love folding washing because as I do that, I kind of inspect the items for repair or potential wear because I don't really have that many clothes now. I've really whittled it down. So they wear out relatively quickly. So I need to replace them. And I just want to check, are there holes forming or is the elastic degrading or whatever? The Japanese call this mushi-boshi, which I love. And it's not only about assessing the item's condition, but it's about renewing the item's place in the home. Like at the change of seasons, they tend to do it where they rotate their possessions, which I love. And that can really bring almost kind of ritualistic element to engaging with your possessions, which it just gets you in touch with who you are, why you like the things that you've got around you. Otherwise, it's just piles of stuff. But the other thing I always say to people and clients that I work with when I say about engaging with possessions, decision-making is a muscle that needs to be exercised. And touching those items, even if you don't intend to let them go, it will actually help you to begin to question, do you need to keep it or do you need to repair it? And if you haven't made decisions about stuff for years and you've just survived on what was in the home or you buy new things, perhaps decades, maybe you haven't really looked at what's in those piles. How can you possibly be good at decision making because you haven't practiced? You haven't actually attempted. So it starts with the touching to assess the stuff. And that's why I think it's really important for us to even just, in a controlled way, start to engage with our possessions. There is the endowment effect. We do have to remember that as well, that when we do touch it, it will make us feel a stronger sense of value and ownership. But it's already in the home. So, I'm guessing you already feel pretty attached to it.
As I messaged you about the other day, I say discovered, like it wasn't literally on display, but it was only when I moved some utensils in my utensil pot that I really noticed for the first time that I owned 5 ladles. And I don't ladle. The only time I use a ladle is with the slow cooker, because like the casserole thing of the slow cooker is very heavy.
Mm.
And so that needs ladling out. Anything else, I just pour. And so having one ladle is sensible. I'm a woman living on her own. I don't know how many ladles anyone needs on rotation, but definitely not 5. But these had been literally in my pot of utensils that I see daily. And it was only when something fell out of the pot, so I was rearranging, that I was like, I have 5 ladles. But it wasn't until I picked them up and touched them that I had that realization that that was unreasonable.
It's an unreasonable number. I mean, 1 for every weekday, like really.
I know.
And you just rinse it out and dry it.
I now own 1 ladle, you'll be glad to know, and somebody at the charity shop who needs 4 ladles will have the time of their life.
Look, there'll be some lady who's making
soup that needs to be separate because one's vegan and one's meaty and one's gluten-free.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No one needs that many.
But yeah, it was only when I touched them and moved them that I kind of got clarity on that.
Exactly.
Because they have been on display for years. Anyway, so let's talk about moving and arranging our things, actually. When I was planning this episode, it made me think of how a lot of people who hoard are resistant to to giving something a home, to putting things somewhere in case it's the wrong place. And it took me an embarrassingly long time to realize that if you put something somewhere and it turns out not to be quite right, you can actually move it. Can you talk a bit about what's behind that thinking and also how we can move past it? Because it's really limiting.
It is. I mean, I definitely get this. The idea that once something is placed in a location or a drawer, like it's dedicated to that type of object. It's cast in stone, right? Like,
yeah, that's where it lives forever. Yeah.
But they always go there. My mother and her mother before her kept the medication in the bathroom. That's heresy to put it in a high cupboard in the kitchen. What are you talking about? Horror. This is just that black and white thinking that has us, God, we think we can't have pancakes for dinner because that's breakfast food. It's all of these rules that we kind of make when really we're free to do whatever we want and move things around, especially if we live on our own, because it's all about what works for you. You can have pancakes for dinner and you can have your living room as an art studio, or you can have,
And like, I have 2 colanders, but I feel absolutely justified in having 2 colanders because I've often got one in the wash and I'm using the other. It's just something in the kitchen I genuinely use a lot.
Exactly.
So I've been doing a lot of work on my kitchen over the last while. And so I've been very conscious about thinking about these things. I feel like, yes, I can justify having 2 colanders. There are other things I can't, and I'm working that through, and finding homes for things can add complexity, can't it?
Yes, it can, because you've got to make the decision on whether you keep it or not, and then when you keep it, where do you put it? So it's multiple steps, so it's multiple decisions.
May I recommend stackable colanders?
Yes, exactly. Oh, things that stack. Don't even talk to me about cans that don't stack in the pantry. I'm irrationally angry about that. I seriously am. I regularly lose it when I try to stack things in the pantry and they don't nest. Oh man, very angry. But I think like there's a kind of a number of reasons, and some we've touched on already, that kind of may be interconnected. But the one that's interesting to me is one I've experienced personally, is that belief that moving an object from its established location might disrupt a meaningful connection. So I noticed kind of this not quite right feeling when I brought home some things from my mum's place when we did downsize number 3. And when I brought them to my home, they just didn't look or feel right, even though, they go with my style and they had some sentimental meaning.
And you wanted them, presumably.
I wanted them. I kind of felt like I had to take them because no one else was going to. So, and then I thought, but I do really like them. I went through all that thought process.
Yeah.
And, it kind of broke the attachment for me, if I'm honest, when I brought them back and I've kind of got them sitting there. I feel like I could pass them on now without really feeling guilty, because I just don't feel that connection. I can still visualize them in my mind's eye in my home, like when I was 5. So I kind of feel like I don't need that. So that's one of the reasons why I think people sometimes don't want to move it, because it's like, well, it's always been there and there's some meaningful image that's connected to it. But perfectionism is always part of the problem. Fear about putting it in the wrong place and not being able to find the ideal place straight away, like not being able to go, oh, this is the perfect place. And again, it's just that rigid thinking that, if I move it to this new place, that will have to be permanent, when really, again, there's no rules.
And I might get it wrong. I might put it there and I might be wrong, and I don't like making mistakes.
You don't like being wrong, and you don't want to have to do it again, because that seems like a waste of time. But I can tell you, I work out 2 years on, why have I got that there when it's nowhere near where I use it? And it will take me, I'll finally work it out. I'll think, oh my God, if I just turn that box on its side, that opens up a whole new storage area. Why have I had it sitting like that all that time? But it's just the nature of the beast. We just are working to get out the door every day, or working to get, that assignment done or whatever. We're not actually pondering this stuff every minute of the day. But when we do discover those little ways to change things up, it does help. But fear of forgetting, oh my gosh, fear of forgetting where they move the items to, especially if they're out of sight. Like that can be the most challenging thing, especially when there's a large volume of stuff.
Yes.
Because not everything can be visible at once. So that's a really hard kind of concept to manage when you're going through the de-hoarding journey, because you have to try and spend the time to organize things in such a way that you can find them, and that they're, so that takes so much time. If it's paperwork, for example, you're going to have to spend the time to really sort through all that and make sure that the most relevant stuff that you need tomorrow is on the top.
Especially when this is an unfamiliar task to you.
Exactly.
If you've not done that for 15 years, it's a different task than somebody who does it every week without really thinking about it.
Because you're on autopilot when you do it all the time. If you're filing or whatever, you just go dit, 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 dit. But when it's something you haven't done, there's 10 decisions about one piece of paper. And that's where the more we put off that engagement, the worse it's going to be over time, because you become less effective at decision making, not more.
And more scared of it, because there's some belief that, well, if I've avoided it for this long, it must be really bad.
Yeah, I listened to your hummingbird episode the other day.
Thank you very much.
And that really struck home to me. And I've noticed that some clients really do need to just be immersed in the space of an area that's really scary and just sit there.
Yeah.
So that kind of connects in with this as well, of just being in the presence of that stuff, that maybe not even touching it for a start, just being near it. And then what actually is in here anyway? Oh, what? Those are those books I was supposed to give back to my sister. Why are they still there? That's the thing, you know, we make it into a big deal.
So quite often, actually, in the de-hoarding accountability Zoom sessions, the task that somebody sets themselves, including me, I've done this, is look at what's in the bag over there. Like, literally, that's the goal. I haven't opened that bag for so long that I'm somehow scared of it. And my task, my goal, my aim is just to see what's in there. And then we start going through it and going, oh, first aid kit. I'll be glad I found that, which was mine the other day. I'm glad I found that now rather than when I just sliced my leg open. But yeah, it's not just me. I know from the de-hoarding accountability Zooms that sometimes when something has been avoided for long enough, it takes on a kind of sinister feeling when it's just a bag of books and magazines.
Exactly. And it's like that whole, oh, I've kept it for this long, there must have been a good reason. It's just mythical. It's just a myth. Yeah. And you're like, you believe it because, oh, well, gosh, I wouldn't have just kept it for no reason. Our story, you know, our minds have to make sense of it by making a story up. It's not just we just have avoided it. It's a story in our head that there's some reason. Can't remember right now, but there's a reason.
I have been through several rounds of getting rid of mugs, and I now have a manageable number of mugs. But there's one that I only realised this yesterday. I don't know who gave it to me, and I don't use it really. But the only reason I'm keeping it is because I suspect the person who gave it to me is a friend who died, just because she's the most likely person to have given me this particular themed mug. So I'm keeping it in case she gave it to me, which I do not know for sure. And that makes no sense. But I hadn't really thought that through. Every time I was like doing another round of reducing the mugs, I was like, that probably came from that friend, so I should probably keep it. Whereas now I've kind of worked that out yesterday in quite a logical way. I'm suddenly like, it may have come from her, but I don't even know, and I don't need to keep it just because it might have.
That is just so spot on, because I had the same discussion with the client the other day about a little tchotchke, a little object that she'd been keeping. I was like, oh, what about this? Oh, I don't know. It looks like something my grandma would have had.
Exactly, yeah.
So do you know if it was grandma's? No, but it looks like the type of thing that she would have had. And that's exactly the same. It looks like the mug that person may potentially have given me.
Yes, we had a shared interest in this particular TV show.
Show, yeah.
But I don't know. I don't know. And also, like, I can miss her a lot and be very sad that she died without needing to hold on to a mug that I don't use and that she might not have given me.
I know. It's until you sort of actually sit with the mug and think about it and have that conversation with yourself, it's just going to sit. It's not moving on its own. It doesn't have legs, even though you might have an emotional attachment to it. It isn't animate.
And I remember her most days without needing to use a mug about a TV show we watched in the 2010s.
Spot on. Absolutely spot on.
Oh, progress in that hoarder's brain eventually.
Oh, I tell you, it's amazing, amazing, amazing progress.
I enjoy making this podcast and it helps me on a personal level. It's a lot of work, but the feedback I get makes it worthwhile. I fund everything about the podcast myself. So if you want to help to ensure the future of the podcast, you can help me to cover the costs by sending a one-off or recurring donation at overcomecompulsivehoarding.co.uk/donate.
One of the other things as well, why we don't want to move things, even like hoarding or no, we find it kind of difficult to find a system maybe that works for the way we live. And that can kind of stop us because, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Like if it kind of works, that kind of belief, I'll just stick with it. I can't really manage change at the moment. There's another one I get. I just can't really manage that change. I have a habit of getting that. It might take someone else coming in to help or someone else saying, you had to move 5 things to get the coffee out to make me a coffee, but you use it every day. But until that happens, until you actually recognise that you could save some time or some effort, but often it's just, I can't change at the moment. I just need everything to remain the same because it's just too hard. The other thing sometimes I've experienced with clients is that they have trouble with spatial processing and visual organisation. So they might not be able to imagine the space any other way, and they might not have that mind's eye to visualise it. So maybe they might need to draw the space and place the furniture and do that sort of thing, or draw the cupboard and work out how they're going to lay it out, but they can't actually visualise that change or imagine themselves doing, the dishes or whatever that way. Like recently I decided that I would change the way I put things into the dishwasher. Oh my God, it's been a complete failure, absolute failure, because my husband just can't. He just can't do it. He just can't. It has to go back to the old way because he just cannot handle it.
There's a couples therapist I've interviewed a couple of times on the podcast called Laura Silverstein, and I'm pretty sure it was her who said that dishwashers cause, or one of the most common cause of arguments in relationships.
And possibly divorce, because seriously, this was nearly divorce material. I was trying to make it more efficient, and it wouldn't have saved any real time, but I was trying something out. I wanted to switch the glasses and the bowls in the top on the top rack.
And it was too far, Jan.
So that the glasses would be closer to the drawer that they get put in, and the bowls would be on the right side for the bowls to go in. I'm like, this makes sense. I'd read some book about mise en place, which I'm sure we'll get into at some point. And I was like, well, that makes sense. It takes you, even if it's just a second, it's quicker, Well, that blew up in my face. That has not worked. So we are back. We have swapped the bowls and the glasses back. It just wasn't.
Some things are not worth the tension.
Seriously, But straightforward avoidance is always there, like not wanting to trigger, as we said earlier, that whole I don't know what's there, and those intense emotions, and feelings of inadequacy that we can't make changes. It's like, oh, well, if I just push that down or just play on my phone or, whatever, ring a friend or do something other than what's right in front of me. But I think we can move past that resistance if we allow ourselves to kind of experiment and notice how we feel when we touch and move things, like you talked about with your mug. We might want to move them back, but we can attempt to sit with that negative stuff, and we might just be able to handle it being in a new location, unless you are my husband and it is the dishwasher. But especially if it kind of improves the functionality of the home. Look, yes, we might all keep looking for it in the old location for a bit, but that's not a failure. That's just a habit that we can train ourselves out of. I think we want it. It's perfectionism again. We want to be good at it straight up. We don't want to have to go, where is that again? Oh, we just want it to, I think we want to be on autopilot, I think we really do want everything to just happen outside of our awareness so we can just, I don't know, be in our heads and ruminate or think about that funny panda video or whatever we saw last night on Instagram. But one of the things that I think is kind of interesting with the more recent research is that people who hoard have an insecure attachment to their possessions, much like they often have with their primary caregiver or romantic partner. So I suspect that the engagement with stuff is kind of fraught with anxiety despite the low risk, right? It's an inanimate object, but it's still an anxiety-driven interaction, which needs to be kind of acknowledged and taken into account when we're dealing with our stuff.
So we're talking about touching things, moving things, arranging our things proactively. Let's talk again a bit more about the benefits of that.
There are so many, but one of the Japanese concepts that I came across while I was looking into this is called te ate, which te means hand and ate translates to care. This is kind of roughly translated to hand healing, which kind of reflects this broader cultural values, such as the beliefs that objects possess spirit or energy, which is similar to that Shinto concept of kami. And that's why Marie Kondo thanks her items for their service when she releases them, that kind of thing. But it refers to that concept of it actually being ritualistic in nature, like it's kind of a way to actually be in the present moment and even maybe verbalize the story of why you have that object. Even if it's just to say, look, this is the best can opener I've ever had. It works every time. I polish it up. It does the job super well. It's never disappointed me. You go back in the drawer. That kind of really paying attention to the construction, the material, how well it works, whether it needs repair, maybe it needs a screw tighten, whatever. That's the sort of stuff. And it refers also to that Japanese emphasis on craftsmanship and direct engagement with materials, because they make a lot of stuff by hand, or they have traditional methods to do so many things. And it's just so amazing to see people crafting things, people in their 70s and 80s, handcrafting things that are going to be treasured by someone in their home for a lifetime or more. Yeah, there's a whole kind of almost, I don't like to say spiritual, but almost sort of that kind of connection with things that I think we miss out on in Western culture. I don't think we're really tapping into that in our kind of consumerist.
Yeah, we're losing a lot of that. Yeah.
Quick and dirty almost. It's very much quick and dirty, whatever, even if it only works once, that's fine.
So my word for this year is intentional. I'm trying to be more intentional.
Mm-hmm.
So thinking about engaging with our stuff and trying to do more with that, what can we do intentionally, especially if we're listening to this conversation and recognizing that this is a block we have that we might not have been aware of before?
I've got a few suggestions for actual practical application of this kind of like intentional engagement. And it really is aimed at promoting a kind of healthier relationship with material things, because I think we're sort of we're a bit insecure about it. I think we're kind of a bit standoffish. But what I would like to say is that we don't always take the time to appreciate those everyday items, nor do we kind of neatly and with consideration organise them carefully. Like it's the slowing down and noticing the conditions of what we use daily and setting up our spaces so we can kind of rotate items, so we can get the joy. Even if we have 5 handbags, that doesn't mean that we just use one and the others are in a pile. The things like our wallet, handbag, keychain, diary, all the things that we touch and use every day. I feel like we deserve those to be beautiful and useful and in good order. So as we are kind of working on this relationship that we have to our stuff, I'm not telling you, please, I'm not telling you go out and buy all new things. I promise I am not. I'm saying use that. I will bet that pretty much everyone who's listening will have a spare wallet or a spare handbag that they've bought thinking, well, when this one collapses, I'll have that one. I want you to think about just having a system where you can change over your handbag very easily and with intention, and just carefully organise everything in your bag so that you're prepared, you're calm, you're ready to go out for the day. I know everyone will have more than one handbag or wallet or whatever it might be. So I want to bring attention to that everyday items that we use. Conscious handling exercises, you might set a timer for 5 to 10 minutes and like mindfully interact with one category of items. Like it might be, for me, it might be in my notebook drawer, because that's one of the things I have way too many of. Pick up each new book and feel the paper and check the quality, practice in the back with your fountain pens or whatever. And then, hopefully, thoughtfully release it. Thoughtfully releasing the ones that I won't use, and give it to a charity that supports my values, and kind of go, yep, I'm now happy that I have 3 notebooks that are there when I need them, not 20.
And that I can find because they're not in a drawer with that I can't even open because it's so full.
Exactly. The other one is rotation stations, like where we might move items through different zones based on how often they're used, so that decision-making becomes easier. Like you were saying with your utensil jar, for example, maybe have a second one and put the ones you use in the second one. And then when you get to the end of the week, month, whatever it is, and you've got all those ones you just didn't use, they're gone. The 4 ladles are gone and you keep one.
Yeah.
Because perhaps there's a bunch there that I found one the other day in my drawer. I pulled it out and it was rusted, and I went, of course I've gone through the process of, I'll clean the rust off. Of course I did.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't I do that?
Yeah.
Clean the rust off. And then I went, you know what? I have never, ever, ever used this serving spoon, ever. Thank you. Goodbye.
And the world can survive without it. Yeah.
Exactly. Seasonal rituals that we talked about before, where we kind of, like the changing of the seasons, we can air out our possessions and kind of assess their usefulness, and maybe, like our grandmothers did, a little bit more of that kind of seasonal ritual. Ceremonial uses I think you can kind of reintroduce. Perhaps you begin a seasonal celebration and have specific special items that you bring out and use or admire before returning them carefully and intentionally into storage, because often things are quite delicate. We don't want to use them all the time, maybe, if they're super, super precious. I want to bring back polishing, dusting, and maintaining household items, because then you actually feel them in your hands, The psychology of design, which I truly believe that the nicer the feel and more aesthetically pleasing objects are, the more we believe or perceive that they are more functional and easier to use just because we like them. So keep the things you like, let go of the things you really hate the look of or don't like using because they don't feel comfortable.
And there's also something about setting out to dust things that will make you go, if you hate dusting, will make you go, do I really need all of these? Because I hate dusting them.
I know.
I have that with, I don't mind doing laundry. I hate hanging it out to dry. And so there are things I'm like, I'm not sure if I'm keeping this or not. And I do have moments of, if I don't keep it, I don't have to wash it.
I don't have to
It
wash
can go
it.
in the bin.
I know. But something about dusting that people really hate it. But it does give you that opportunity to really look at the furniture and see if that needs to be oiled, if it's wood or whatever, you know. One of the other things that I liked the idea of was the kind of idea of documenting through photos the befores and afters of items that you've cared for. So, you know, maybe your credenza or whatever you call it, sideboard I call it, maybe needs an oil and a polish up. Before and after pics to see how satisfying it is to look after something. Even like the 2 chairs that I picked up off the side of the road that were being thrown into hard rubbish. And I've now spent a fortune having them recovered, and they are magnificent. And everybody comments on them, and I adore them, and I make sure that I wipe down the wood all the time and oil it. And I'm thinking, well, maybe I could get another 50 plus years out of these 50-year-old chairs.
And because you chose the fabric and you were very intentional about that, it means something to you.
They're now mine.
Yeah, yeah.
Before they were just some old guys.
Yeah, and I think when you brought up the hummingbird method earlier, I think that's a really good call, because I'm thinking about, as well as like having bags and boxes that we might be kind of vaguely intimidated by, I had a period where a particular room in my house I was intimidated by. It just felt I can't, so I just never went in it. And so the way I started tackling that was I just made a rule that every day I had to go in and out of that room.
Yeah.
Didn't have to do anything, touch anything, look at anything. Just at some point in the day, I had to walk into it and walk out again. And it kind of broke the spell of that room is too overwhelming and slightly scary.
Yeah.
And that was a similar thing to just plonk yourself down by the side of the bag, or, yeah.
And even if you're sitting there reading a book or, you know, or doing some work, at least you're in the vicinity of the stuff, because it's much easier just to not do that. There is one last thing that I really think people could get a bit overwhelmed and cross by it, but I really think this is kind of a meaningful concept. So in Japanese architecture, paintings, and gardens, they always include ample surrounding space. So it's called ma. It's the meaningful emptiness. It embodies that kind of dynamic of meaningful space between objects and moments and experiences. So it's the pause between notes in a song or whatever. So the idea is that it's not empty, but it kind of offers us mental tranquility when we can rest our eyes and reduce the stimulation entering our nervous system. This can really blow people's minds because they feel like the space needs to be filled. If there's space there, logically it should have something in it. But I would like people to kind of have a think about and see if they can create maybe some spaces that are calmer with less objects, even just one beautiful object on display, because crowding diminishes the individual significance of the object. I really truly feel that when I do that, I can admire the object a lot more, and I kind of get that sense of it offering. The idea is that it offers room for you to kind of grow and change, and you can also interpret that negative space as something else, or there's all this kind of philosophical stuff. But I really do feel like there is richness in simplicity, and that's something that is a difficult concept for people to imagine, but I think it's worth pondering.
Yeah, in a recent interview with Carrie Lagerstedt, she was talking about visual overstimulation being a real issue, especially for neurodivergent people, but I think for a lot of people. But as you talk, I'm also thinking of the interview I did with Harriet Impey about how she grew up with the kind of message that if there is a space, obviously you fill it. Obviously, what's the point of a space if you're not filling it up?
Obviously, why? What's the point of a space without it? Yeah.
And that it was when she got married and her husband was like, why is there stuff behind the sofa?
Why is that gap behind the sofa?
And she was like, why would I not put stuff behind the sofa? It's a space. And kind of that really being challenging initially for her. And so as you're talking, I really like the idea, first of all, of what you said of the space isn't empty. Like, it's not a void. It's part of the whole.
Yeah.
But also the visual overstimulation thing and it is possible to have a space without filling it thing. All of that is what's in my head as you're talking. And I think it's all really relevant stuff.
Because you've spoken before about, I would never want to live in minimalism because it would be sterile, etc. But when I think of, the Japanese concept, it never feels like that. It actually feels, it kind of holds some sort of
kind of full. Yeah,
because it's just. The highlight is the one object or the one, ikebana or or the one plant, maybe it's a plant or something, but that's the focus. The area needs to be clear so that you have that, so that your mindful awareness is on that object. I have had some conversations with people in the neurodivergent community who actually need more stimulation in their space than others.
Yes.
So that's where we get into that maximalism, clutter core kind of area. But there is still some ways to really style that in a way that makes it cohesive.
It's not the same as chaos. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not the same as chaos, exactly. And I think I found that hard to kind of explain, and I've only been able to do that with pictures and ideas for people because I do love it. I do love the look of it. I couldn't live that way because I just find it too much, but a lot of people really, really love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's one of the things I think is a struggle for people, but it is not empty. It is, it's not an empty space.
It is extra question time, so I need a number from you between 1 and 76. This is the bit where I ask guests an extra question. It's sometimes a slightly silly one, and Hoarding darlings get access to this extra question and the answer. If you would like to become a Hoarding darling, go to overcomecompulsivehoarding.co.uk/darling. Okay, back to the podcast. So, Jan, if people want to find out more about what you do, if people want to find out more about you, what is the one best place they can find you online?
I'd probably say Instagram at stuff_ology, although I'm not massively great at posting on there. I post once a week with my newsletter, but come find me there.
Marvellous. Jan Eppingstall, thank you very much indeed.
You are quite welcome. May we take a moment to reflect on the meaning of place and acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we record and listen to this podcast today. I am speaking on the lands of the Boon Wurrung people of the Kulin Nation, and I acknowledge their connection to country, both land and sea, and culture. We pay our respects to their elders, past and present, and extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples listening today.
It's the bit where that hoarder shouts out someone wise.
So, as you know, my mental health has been a bit wobbly lately, and one of the things that is helping me is listening to funny stuff. I always appreciate listening to funny stuff, and lately I need things to be quite gentle. And A podcast that's relatively new to me but has quickly become a firm favourite because it is both gentle and funny is a BBC podcast with Ellis James and John Robbins. It is not very imaginatively called Ellis James and John Robbins. Anyway, I really was touched by this message they got from a listener. Have a listen.
This is a lovely message from Rosie. Rosie says, "Hello, my mindful muffins. I just wanted to say how much I connected with the discussion about radical acceptance. Yes, please. In relation to periods of depression or low mood. I've experienced spells of depression every 6 to 9 months for 10 years, and thankfully they tend to lift in a matter of weeks. Over the last decade, most of my attempts in therapy or treatment have been to try and work out what my triggers are, how to avoid the spells, or how to shorten the spells when they happen. I've not found anything which has effectively done any of those things, and my shame at not being able to fix myself, if anything, was making things worse. I've come to the realization that I get depressed because I'm someone who gets depressed. The weight lifted from accepting that I cannot hack or fix my way out of periods of low mood has been so freeing. Here, high hands. Instead, in my most recent spell of depression, I tried solely to focus on the things which made the days even slightly less hard. Being outside, working in the garden, and resting, all being things which worked for me, even if only for a few minutes. A little bit like Alistair Campbell's jam jar. Yeah. I've tried to let go of the idea that these things are worthless until they solve the problem. Instead, I accept that I am not a problem to be solved. As John has mentioned before, every feeling, good or bad, that I have ever had has ended, and so will the depression too. Thank you for your candour and thoughtfulness around these subjects, as well as providing all the cracking content." That's from Rosie. Thank you, Rosie.
Thank you, Rosie.
I'm so pleased you've got to that place. And it's all a journey of exploration, of course, and no understanding is wasted. But I am enjoying the book Radical Acceptance by Tara Brach.
I will link to the Ellis James and John Robbins podcast in the show notes at overcomecompulsivehoarding.co.uk. And thank you for listening, and I will speak to you next time. Thank you for listening to That Hoarder Overcome Compulsive Hoarding podcast. It's been a pleasure to have you on board. You can find all the links I've mentioned and a transcript of the episode online at overcomecompulsivehoarding.co.uk. To find out more about how you can support this podcast and the overall project, go to overcomecompulsivehoarding.co.uk/support and do subscribe to the podcast so you make sure you don't miss any future episodes. There may be links in this podcast that earn me money. This doesn't come at any extra cost to you if you make a purchase through those links, and it helps to support the podcast. I love that I just write intro blah blah every time now and just figure something
blah,
will come
blah,
out of
blah,
my mouth.
Blah, 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 blah. And
but,
it will.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've done that somewhere. I must have put it in the wrong spot.
Yeah.
I thought I did it. I think that the engagement with stuff
I love that
is really...
I love that you came in... I love that you came in there as if there had not been a 20-minute pause. It was perfection. The tone that it was like I just asked the question. It's absolute pro.
Hilarious.
Broadcasting perfection.
Oh my God.
Sorry.
Okay. Now I've lost the plot.
Shall I ask the question again and we can just try and pretend we know what we're doing?
Yeah, that's it.
So I will link to the Ellis James and John Robbins podcast in the show notes at overcomecompulsivehoarding.uk. No, I won't.